Thank you so much, Aamir, for joining us on this special interview series conducted by Veda College. It's called Interview with the Inspiration.
Thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure.
We would like you to start by sharing your journey as a professional artist and an entrepreneur. Right from your school or college days when you started doing art, what were the major milestones, and how did coming up with your own studio? How did all this happen?
Okay, so yeah, if you have seen my LinkedIn profile, you might have seen that I'm from VIT Meshra, and I was a joint president as Fine Arts Society in VIT Meshra. So my artistic journey started there. But if you talk about my school life, that's the key point where I was learning art from my school teacher. Rajiv Rasar is a great artist, and with him I toured several places. And in the tour, I also won a national award youth festival. It is organized by Government of India. After that, life happened. I started preparing for engineering. I was in Fiji. I went to VIT Meshra, and for like 2-3 years, I did not paint. I did not even sketch. And luckily, I get into Fine Arts Society in VIT Meshra, and I happen to be joint president of Fine Arts Society. After that, I joined Byju's, and by Byju's, my profile was a creative artist. I had to make animation assets for animations. So, and my entrepreneur life also started after Byju's. When I joined Byju's, I remember talking to Byju's sir. He took a session with us, like a small group of people. Byju's sir taught us a lot of things. I remember like it was my 7th day or 8th day. He was taking a session. He said that stay here only if you think you belong here. If you are really passionate about this job, otherwise there's no point. So that was a key point. He even said that I remember that he was also talking to salespeople in the team. He said that he's the best sales guy in the floor right now. So I can see that confidence like from his face, that the way he was talking, everything like inspired me. At that moment, I knew that I want to be like him. I want to be an entrepreneur. Like being an artist is good. I know that it pleases me. It suits my soul. But being an entrepreneur is something you can call it cool. And but I don't really think it like this. I just, when I met him, he inspired me so much that I was like, yeah, this is something I knew that I want to do. But it took me some time to understand that point. I remember that there was one feedback session in Byju's. They asked to fill us a form that what you want to become in next 5 years. And I felt a better artist and a sales grandmaster. I didn't even knew why I wrote sales grandmaster, but I think of it right now as it's about being an entrepreneur. Like how you get into a business side of any, like I choose animation and arts. I get into the business side and I need to know that I'm selling enough to my consumers, my clients, and I have a proper team that to which also I'm selling, that you should be sticking with us, and you'll have a better future with us. That's how it all started.
So great. Now this is really interesting because you said that you were an engineer, and interestingly, we also have quite a few students in our animation college who have done their engineering or have left their engineering halfway through because they knew that inside them there was a bigger artist, not an engineer. And how did your parents and relatives take this decision that you are not going to take the traditional engineering line and now you are going to do something out of your own? Was that a challenge?
Not much, I think. My parents are like, I remember talking to them after joining Byju's, and I explained them my profile. It's more or less like an artist. My parents wanted me to be an IAS officer, but then I went into a private job, and they were like, they were not forcing me to do anything, but they were definitely putting their opinion about being an IAS officer. And I was like, I'll think about it, but in my head, I don't think that's where I belong. So I took them once to India Art Fair. I have taken them to multiple art fair, but India Art Fair is, I think, the 6th best art fair in the world. And Art Basel recently purchased like 90% stake of the company. So it's one of the biggest art fair on the world, or probably highest footfall that we see. It's in New Delhi. So I took my parents there, and they were really impressed by like almost all the paintings were in like at the higher end of crores, or were in the higher end of lakhs or in crores. So the financial aspects is always very important to any parents. Why do parents want their children to be a doctor or an engineer, not an artist? Only because they want them to be financially independent.
Secure,
They don't.
yes.
That's the only reason that they think that one should not be artist, because there will be a lot of financial struggle. You may not get enough money to survive your family, like with wife and kid. That would be very difficult. So when I took them to India Art Fair, that I think that changed their thinking about art. That art can sell, and when it sells, it like I told you, like most of the paintings were in crores. And then I started my company after that, and my father showed trust in me. And there are many family relatives, like my one of my uncle is an Supreme Court lawyer. He has his own law firm. He also inspired me a lot. Like he talked to my father, and like although there is like a community in my relatives also, like who supported me on this. So I think it was pretty easy for me compared to most of the people. I think that I'm lucky enough.
Great. So you have been quite lucky on that part.
Yeah.
And of course, you have been able to prove to your parents that art actually sells nicely.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's more important. So now Byju's is an interesting place to work at because it works primarily in the field of education. And so could you just talk about what kind of animation skills are required in an educational setup like Byju's?
Okay. Yeah, so as a job career for any animator or artist, educational setup or like online education is coming through the surface. Like every next year, we can see a new startup company in edutech sector. Byju's is the king right now. So when I was in Byju's, the process was pretty simple. I think it's become more complex nowadays. The simple idea is they want the portfolio. If you have a contact, they still want a portfolio to get you in the company. The basic idea in going into any edutech company is that they want a good portfolio. So same is the case with the Byju's. The Byju's is currently working with both 2D and 3D animators, but I think they are mostly focused on 2D because the major chunk of the videos are built in 2D. 3D is mostly for kids 1 to 3 section, class 1 to 3.
Okay.
So if you, yeah,
So
that's the
2D
whole
animation
idea.
is the main skill over there.
Yes, but they also take 3D animators. Like, but I think the 3D animators in Byju's are mostly based. They work with Disney, so the quality of 3D they need is really high. So
Okay.
that's the key.
Another very interesting thing that you mentioned in your LinkedIn profile is your love for physics, and we also know from experience that 3D animators need to know physics. So can you please
Even to
elaborate more on that? Like how important is the a base, even at least a basic, because artists usually don't like science, and when we start talking to them about science, they think that why even is this being discussed? So can you please elaborate on the use of science in the field of art and animation?
yeah, so I won't just say science; it's also maths. So when we are animating something, we are also looking at the different graphs that software gives us. So we look at the like traditional 2D animation have that key points that कितने देर पे कितना frames बनेगा और कितने distance पे बनेगा. So we actually check the distance and the time on the paper. But the new software like simple software like After Effects have the graph where we can check the value graph and a speed graph, and uh, we align our animation with our imagination. Same thing with the 3D animation. We have the key points. We change the key points to change the speed. So how do we decide the speed? Like I said that we have to align the animation with the imagination. So a person's imagination depends on how he calculates, how he imagines in his mind using science, which is basically physics. So if a ball is dropping from a certain height to the surface of Earth, it won't be at the constant speed. There will be certain acceleration, and when it hits the ground, there will be an elastic force rebounding it back. There will be a different speed graph there. So until unless you know the physics behind the ball dropping from a certain height and the elastic force bouncing it back, and what will be the speed of bouncing back ball. So it will be difficult for a normal animator until that would come from practice. But a guy who is really interested in physics, who understands graph and maths, it will be easy for him to understand this. And this is a simple example of ball, but this comes with everything. Like if you are making a normal person walking, or if you're making a Superman walking, there will be a difference because the elasticity and the force will be different. So that is the key factor, because if you see the old animation of Superman, all those things, I don't think they actually consider a lot of physics there. But right now I can see in like Marvel movies and DC movies, they actually considered physics. So it makes it look very realistic. So there has to be a momentum shift, like when someone is jumping, when someone is walking. So that's where physics plays an important part.
Great. So now you have had a very interesting journey. So could you please talk about a few major, you have already told actually a few major milestones, but since you have started your own enterprise, your own studio, what have your major milestones been?
Okay, so we have just recently started. It's been like it's going to be 2 years now. I didn't even know how to start a company to begin with. I left the job and I thought of starting a company. I talked to my parents that I want to start a company. I talked to some of my friends who were interested. So I registered it as a private limited company. And then the biggest challenge that I think I had was to get my first client, because Byju's never allowed us to take anything from the system as our portfolio. So I literally had no portfolio. So I started working for the lowest price that was possible at that time. And then I hired a team. So I hired probably 6 people at that time, 3 people to start with, and then moved to 6 people at that time to begin with. And then we were hustling to get the first client. That was my biggest challenge. But then it had a momentum after like 4 or 5 months continuous work. We were not charging much, but the quality of work that we were providing was very good, above the industry standard. So after this, I can see there's a momentum shift that I could not handle work and phone calls after like 8 to 10 months. Like I had to either reject the work or I have to postpone it after next month. I have to say that I can't do this month. So I think someone is starting as an entrepreneur or even a freelance artist. The first 6, 7 months would be challenging. Let's say for 10, 12 months would be challenging to get the first few 5 clients. And then after like 7, 8, 10th client, it would become easy. It would become so easy that you would like give up some calls, that you won't reply to some emails. That would happen because it is a requirement, and video and animation work, it's a current requirement. Any company getting into advertisement needs this kind of work.
Mm-hmm. Great. So, so we also have quite a few students who want to, who would like to work for a couple of years or 3, 4 years in the industry and then have their own studios. So I think this experience of yours would really be very useful for them. Moving ahead, can you talk about the market situation, how it has grown in the past few years, and how do we expect to see the next few years in this market? So, and also considering this Corona situation, what do you think will be the impact of Corona? So please talk about last few years and the next few years.
Yeah. So when I started my career, there was very less edutech companies, and all the edutech companies basically work on animation sector. They make all the videos are either edited on Premiere Pro, or they have motion graphics, or they have 2D animation, or 3D animation. There are 4 sectors, or all the 4 sectors basically come under animation. All the artist animators work on those softwares. And in the recent years, there are multiple edutech sectors. So as a career point of view for any animator, this industry is very helpful for any animator, anyone looking for a career. So edutech industry is the first goal, I think, should be for any animator as a job purpose. But for a passionate animator, I would suggest them, I would like That would be my personal suggestion, to go into a hardcore animation studio, because any edutech company would finally care about the content of the video, not the real animation. So even Byju's compromises with their animation. Right now they are making great content, but like 5 years back down the line, like 5 years in 2008 animation, they are making it now. So for them, any education company that's starting right now, for them, they choose to have a normal video with a great content. But any animation studio, hardcore animation studio, will always choose animation quality also, like with content. So if someone who is really passionate artist should also look for, I mean, don't just look for job, look for some company who are really passionately creating.
You were talking about how if you really are an artist at core, then some edutech companies will probably lay more emphasis on the content and not on the animation,
Yes.
the various styles of it.
Yeah. So if someone is really a hardcore passionate artist, I think they should not be really focusing on job in the like first 2-3 years of their career. They should mostly focus on their skill sets. Like if I start a job right now, I would probably think of what who is a better artist in the industry and where is he working right now. So if I'm looking for some great names, I'll search if he's working for a particular studio. I'll apply for that studio and I'll try to work under him. So that is the first, that is the only way I think that anyone can learn directly work as a job. If someone as a passionate artist goes to a company like any edutech company, he'll have to like prepare for respiratory system and which he may not like, he may like, but I think the point is that when they are making any respiratory system animation, the content is more important than animation. And that's the key point. As an animator, as an artist, what do you want? If you are really focused on content, then you can definitely go to edutech companies. Otherwise, if you really want to make great animation as a Disney-like animation, then go for animation industry like prop.
So can you also talk about the market scenario, how it has grown in the past few years and how we can expect it to be in the next few years?
Okay, so during this Corona time, there is 150% growth in sales in the subscription basis of Byju's. That's what I read recently, and that means that this stat shows that most of the people are going into online education system. They want to stay at their home and want to learn from them. YouTube was already a platform, but nobody was really looking into it. But with Byju's into this field, there will be many companies like Upgrad and Unacademy. All those people will also consider making more and more content online, and they will be needing more and more animators. So that's the key shift from in terms of education sector, which will help create job for animators. The second part is that which I prefer is advertisement part. So a lot of there are always new companies coming in into this sector and they need advertising, and advertising has become very costly in recent years. And with the camera setup and everything, with live advertising getting very expensive, people are looking for a substitute like animation, explainer video, short animation, which are basic motion graphic works, which are simple and not so costly. That is also a shift in the sector, because even before we have seen animation work in the advertisement, but those were very costly animation work and mostly 3D work. But I can see that there are many companies who want to get like 10 videos in a month, and they want some basic videos, and those are like decent prices. So most companies are going to prefer this, because at the end of the day, they want to send many content on internet, irrespective of like one content in like 6 months. So that's what I think is going to change in advertisement sector.
Yeah, I think that's a very useful motion graphics gaining market. How do you think has the pre-production sector in India fared in the last few years, and again, what will it be doing in the next few years?
Okay, so I'm not sure how to answer this question because I am in this section in last 2 years. So what has changed? You are asking in the pipeline, right? For me, the pipeline is mostly how it should come intuitively to every studio. Like I have a different pipeline to a generic pipeline that everyone uses. So it comes because when I'm creating a pipeline, I have to think it the most cost-effective way to create any animation. If I have to go through same, like I said in the advertisement sector, I have to reduce the cost of motion graphic even we do 2D animation. So I try to reduce the cost for our consumer. So I have to reduce the pre-production work also. So that depends on the pipeline. If I introduce more and more process in between processes and more specific work associated with it. Like a simple motion graphic of a person walking should not go through 5 different processes. Like a single person can complete the work efficiently without a review. I mean, there will be a final review also. But that's what I think. That's my personal opinion. There are different pipelines that industry follows. I personally believe that every animation studio should be considering their own financial aspects, their own productivity pipeline. That's the final game. That if you are making a film or if you are making a particular video, then what would be the best cost efficient way to produce that video, and it may not be equivalent to Disney or any other studio, any Pixar studio kind of a studio, but if it satisfies your needs, you can have a great margin on that. Then pre-production work should be like that it should be based on your intuition, it should be based on your specific needs of the company.
Okay, great. So, what are your future plans and how do you plan to grow your company now?
Okay, so I can see that in advertisement sector there is no big name. There is so many mushrooms everywhere. I can see there are many small companies making graphic, normal motion graphic works, 2D animation or 3D animation, and they have a section like there are people working in Kerala, there are people working in Chennai, there are a few studios in Bangalore, there are few studios in Noida and Delhi. So there are like probably hundreds of studios all over India, but there is no one single name. The same was the condition of edutech companies in 2006-7 when there was so many small sections like Byju's was already there in 2006. But then Byju's classes were there and Academy was also there, I believe. So the thing is that I think there has to be a key player in advertisement sector also. So when I think of advertisement, I need an advertisement video for my company. I Google it and I try to look for a company. Either I go for a company that I never heard of, or I have to look for a freelancer on some site like freelancer.com or Upwork. And then with freelancer, there is a demerit that you might not get your work on time. You might not get the efficiency. They will not receive your call on time. There is not constant customer feedback. So there are a lot of loopholes in this service sector. So that is my first focus right now, to get into the advertisement field and get these things sorted out. So there should be a good name. There should be a proper customer service for everyone looking for advertising video, explainer video. And the second part that I'm focusing on in making animation videos, because what we were discussing in our team that there is no Disney or Pixar kind of a studio in India yet. We are not making a movie saying that there is no scope for animation in India. There is no market. But you can see that Bahubali had a lot of VFX and animation work, and it did really good. That means people actually like those kind of work. But then we took animation as a kids content. We make Chota Beam kind of movie. I think that's where the problem is. There is a studio called Warner Sena Studio. Uh, Vivek Ram sir is the owner of Warner Sena Studio. I had a talk with him. He also thinks that animation will change in India with two aspects. One in we have to increase the quality of the content, because right now all the animation studio either work for third party freelancer for some bigger studios, or they just sell some cheap quality animation. So this should be changed. And the second part is that we need to create our own content. Like we right now dependent on some mythological content or some content given to us by some foreign uh, studio. Like Paramount hire studios in India to do some really labor-intensive work.
Mm.
It's that's the basic problem. I think we can create a content team. We can create our own movies.
So, having our own original content, having our films, our stories, rather than just working for someone else, having stories from within and what you said was very interesting, that at the moment we are just dependent on mythological stories for creating animation. There should be more fiction work being created in India. And that
Original content format. Yeah.
So yeah, so that is very interesting. So moving ahead, we would like to know from you what kind of so that there exists a gap between academics or say whatever certification courses we have related to animation and how actually things work in the industry. So keeping that in mind, what would you suggest our students about how should they prepare if they have to come in your line?
Okay, so I'm not very sure about the courses in animation studio, but I have met many students and they have told me that animation colleges and animation, although it's a third party who like teaches the course on Maya and everything, they are not good enough. So they are just, even they have told me there are students actually teaching it. Like a fourth year students graduating the college and next year he becomes the teacher. That's the scene in animation colleges, some colleges that I heard. I'm not very
Okay.
sure of it. So of all the students who came from animation background, what I think they miss is the thing that I talked about, like about the physics, that how a bird should fly. So I think they get into software too much. They try to decode the software too much. They
Mm-hmm.
think that Maya is the key or like Zebras is the key. It's not the key. Like there are tons of, so if you go into Disney, they don't work on Zebras. So that's not the key. So key is your imagination, how you think of an object moving. How if you are a 2D animator, how like can you draw a figure properly? Can you draw a person walking or like eating or doing anything from your imagination without looking at any reference? So these are the key factors. If I'm hiring someone right now, so we are a 2D animation based sector. So I always look for an artist based person. If a person can draw is the basic key point for me. So I would suggest for anyone in colleges that don't look for software. Like software will come eventually. It takes less than 6 months to learn the basic of any software, and then when you start working on it, you will learn eventually. But the key point that takes time is the basics. Like if you're an artist, if you're want to go into 2D animation, you should be able to draw. You should be able to draw a person into perspective. You should be able to draw a person in actions. You should be able to draw a chair from different angles. All these things should come naturally to you before getting into any industry. And for 3D animation also, like all the animation sectors should be able to imagine things before getting into the software. Like if I am making a movie, it should run into my head before I sit on my PC and start working on my software. Like with software you can evolve the procedure. Like you can think of like I can do this way, this is the better way. But before even creating a project in the software, a movie should play in my head before that. When I read the script, it should play in my head.
Exactly, that's very interesting. Um, this actually brings us to the last question for today, and which is, you must have seen a lot of showreels and portfolios. So,
Yeah.
what are the common mistakes that students generally make when they are making their showreel? So, what guidelines would you suggest them to follow while making a good showreel?
Okay, I think the basic mistake is they make a very generic showreel and probably they send it to all the studios. That's the basic mistake. If I am posting a job requirement for motion graphic artist, showreel should contain only motion graphic artists, motion graphic works, because I have seen showreel with all the 3D works, and I have actually posted for motion graphic art. So that is a basic problem that I can see everywhere. So there should be a showreel for motion graphic works. 2D animation, 3D animation. If I'm looking for 3D animation, don't show me a showreel based on motion graphic. Then that like it will discourage me to look even into your resume. Because first thing that I look into is portfolio. If your work is good enough, then I'll consider looking at your where all places you have worked before.
So, yeah, thank you so much, Amir, for joining us on this interview. And I think it has been a really fruitful conversation because some of the insights that you shared are really going to be very useful for our students as well as our faculties and as our college in general. So, thank you once again so much for joining us.
You're welcome. It was pleasure for me too. Thank you.